Hello, this is Astrologer Coach Sonja Francis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming new moon, which will be on November 15th at 12:07 a.m. East Coast time in the US, so right after midnight, and then 5:07 a.m. London time. And this new moon aligns at 23 degrees of Scorpio, and of course, every new moon is always a new moon cycle. 28-day cycle, and new moons are usually introverted times when we go within to learn what it is that we want to align ourselves with for the next 28 days. And of course, part of that is the process of setting intentions, new moon intentions. So that can be a really helpful practice in connection with the new moon energies. And if that's something that you do and that you like to do, then feel free to stay tuned until the end of this video. I'll be talking about the most potent and the best times to set those intentions. Now, also please take advantage of the timestamps that I have added to the description part of the video. Those are great in case you want to watch the video in shorter sequences or you want to jump back and forth between different aspects of the new moon chart. Now, this new moon will bring us closer to the beginning of eclipse season, which starts on November 20th. My next members full moon video is already going to be about the lunar eclipse in Gemini. So it's coming up, it's coming closer. So just know that eclipse season means that we're moving into uncharted territories and it might feel a little bit uneasy at times. Now, this new moon is also a supermoon, and this is the third of 3 super new moons in a row. And these occur when the moon becomes either full or new while it's at its closest distance to the Earth, and therefore it makes this lunation more powerful. Now, with the super new moon in passionate, all or nothing Scorpio, it brings our focus to our intimate relationships and deepest emotional desires and fears. So Scorpio is the second water sign of the zodiac, and so it relates not only to the depth of our own psyche, but also to the ecstasies and traumas of our relationships. So before we jump in and talk about the Scorpio energy and how to understand it better and how you can connect with that for the next 28 days, let me mention that with this super new moon, we are also dealing with 2 exalted planets. And they are moving, that means that they're moving much slower at this time, and therefore their energies are exalted. One of them is Mars in Aries, which is still exalted because of this, moving slower. It's called a station phase. And it starts to change direction again on November 13th, which is right before the new moon becomes exact. Because it's ending its 9-week retrograde phase. The other planet is Neptune, which is also exalted over the next several weeks because it's preparing to end its 5-month retrograde phase. And I have more about those planetary movements in connection with our own birth charts in our forecasting forum on November 8th. Feel free to click on the link below this video and add the Mars in Aries, Neptune in Pisces Exalted webinar to your cart if you want to watch this webinar. That's available after November 8th on my webinar page on my website. Now, in connection with Mars, with this exalted Mars, which is part of this new moon chart, you can ask yourself, what has come up for me since July 25th around self-identity, aggression, personal passions? What, if anything, have I already revised, reprocessed, or redone since Mars went retrograde back on September 9th? And how will this new connection to myself and the things I identify with impact the next steps of my life? And so again, with my new moon videos, with all my videos, there are always going to be coaching questions that I ask. And the reason for these coaching questions is simply for you to be able to have an internal inquiry with the energies that are at play for this particular lunar phase. So in this case, for the next 28 days. Now, in connection with the exalted Neptune energy, you can ask yourself, what have I learned since June 23rd about trusting the flow of life and my intuitive voice, my intuitive sensing? And how might this understanding help me interact more from a loving heart space? And how might this impact our moving forward collectively? Because remember, Neptune is a collective planet, and in Pisces, in particular, it connects all of us together in terms of our energetic heart connections. Now, the gift of compassion and forgiveness, the gift of an open heart that seeks to understand, is our gift to the world, especially at this time in terms of our collective journey. So even when it is hard sometimes to wrap our minds around how others react or behave in certain situations, our heart space is what really is important, that we really want to make sure that we're sending out these heartfelt energies towards the world. Now, the station phase of Neptune allows us to fully see how an open, forgiving heart can shift our experience and our interactions with other people. So ask yourself, what's in my present awareness? What asks for my attention when it comes to resting, trusting, and allowing? And these are some very Neptune words, right? Resting, trusting, allowing. Going with the flow is another one. Now, what demands my attention in connection with a long-term dream of mine? Because, of course, Neptune is also about the dream or the imagination that we have, in which we can create things in our imagination. The dream that we have of for ourselves and for the world. And when I tune into myself, what do I feel connected to? What if I tune into life itself? What do I feel connected to? Now, again, with these questions, feel free to journal on these questions, or you can also meditate on the questions. If none of these options sound good to you, then feel free to just pose the questions as you feel is appropriate throughout the next 28 days or after the new moon becomes exact. Now, Neptune in Pisces has been in a square to the current moon nodes in Gemini-Sagittarius since mid-September of 2020, and this will continue until late February 2021. So that's quite a long period of time. It's currently in a station phase, which means it's moving slower, right? So, and this gives this square with these moon nodes more weight because the planet is moving slower and is exalted. So between November 12th and December 18th, which is the period of the station phase when Neptune is exalted, we will feel this square even stronger. So notice when your mind gets really busy and distracts you from the present moment. Notice when your beliefs or assumptions take you on a detour away from what you're actually sensing to be true in the now moment. Notice when being right becomes more important than being connected or being wholehearted. And when you notice any of these above things, just ask yourself, might a moment of silence bring me back to what's here now? Because remember, the present moment is the most powerful moment that we live in, because it is the moment that we create our future in. So being present, being in the now moment, being able to connect to that in a powerful way is really, really important. And the mind tends to take us away from that present moment because it likes to move around. The mind likes to be busy, likes to be in the past, in the future. Now, might it allow me to drop back into my heart if I were to go into silence, if I were to connect with the now, with the here and now? Might it support me in finding a heart connection with myself and others if I do that? So it's really, in a sense, you could say it's about calming the mind, because the mind is the busy component in our, in our human experience. So calming the mind and really allowing ourselves to connect more to our emotional and physical experience in the now moment, because that is what centers us in the here and now. Now, if you want to have access to the new moon questions from this video in writing, because sometimes that can be useful if you want to journal, if you want to meditate on the questions. And also to the full moon videos every month, then feel free to check out the various levels of membership that are available on my website at astrologercoach.com. And if you're already a member, then check your membership portal by signing into your account, and you will find all my posts inside the My Content tab. And the new moon questions are available via the Super New Moon in Scorpio article, right? So if you see that article in your My Content tab, just click on that and you'll get access to all the coaching questions. And that article will be available at the very latest by November 11th, probably sooner than that. Now let's talk about Scorpio and some of the other aspects in this new moon chart. Now Scorpio is associated with 3 images. One of them is the scorpion, like the name of the sign says. And the scorpion sort of like symbolizes a creature that operates from self-protection and from an instinctive desire to be safe or to protect itself. Then the other image of Scorpio that belongs to the Scorpio energy is the eagle. And the eagle is this majestic animal that's big and powerful and that kind of has a wider awareness and control over its desires and knows how to really be very focused on what it wants and go for it. And if necessary, kill. Go for the kill or just go for whatever it desires. Now, the third image of Scorpio is the dove. It's like a white dove. And the dove symbolizes the transcendence of our personal desires and the ability to bring peace and healing to ourselves and others. So if you think about these images, right, just ask yourself, what am I gifted when I face my deepest fears, right? When I face that scorpion image, that's all about self-protection and, staying within the realm of safety. What am I gifted when I face my deepest fears? And what if there was always only transformation as a result of going deeper towards what scares me the most? Never an actual death of any kind. Because often what we fear the most, right, is that something is going to be obsolete, that it dies, that it's gone, right? The loss of something. And what if there was never really that loss or that death happening? What if it was just a matter of transforming something? And what if a journey through the valley of darkness led ultimately to my standing in my true power? So sometimes when we really are willing to go into the dark or into some of the aspects of ourselves that scare us the most, if we're willing to embrace dark emotions or emotions that feel uncomfortable, only by moving through that or into that, we can stand in our true power, because we need to embrace all of who we are in order to be in our power, a true power. Because there is such a thing as false power as well, where we think we're in our power, but we're really not. Because true power is all about an open heart. It's all about complete acceptance and complete inclusion of everything there is, right? That's true power. False power is more about, controlling and suppressing and disempowering, something else in our lives, or having control and power over somebody else. Now, how might surrender or trust in a higher power and letting go of resentment and fear give me a better understanding of peace, authentic connection, and inner strength? And when you work with that question, really try to think about, where in your life does resentment and fear show up? Where is there a sense of not being able to surrender or to trust? Where is there a sense of not being able to have an authentic connection for the fear of rejection or for the fear of loss? And where is there sort of like a sense that inner strength is something that has to be rigid or that has to be protective, rather than inner strength being something that is open-hearted and open, that there is sort of like a strength in just being who you are. Now, Scorpio also, of course, deals with our shadow issues. So the shadow, of course, is all that is suppressed or denied or within ourselves, or any underdeveloped qualities of our personality. And wherever we have yet to fully integrate some of these disowned aspects so that we can feel more empowered. Any place where we feel disempowered, we are basically left vulnerable to manipulation or domination by other people. So really allowing ourselves to connect to all the parts of ourselves that we have a hard time with is ultimately very powerful, and is ultimately a really beautiful goal to have. And it is also good to remember that it is a process, that it's not maybe going to happen with everybody overnight, that we can just go, oh yeah, let me just, all these suppressed stuff and denied things, no problem. I'm going to be okay with it from now on, right? So just remember it's a process, because it's an emotional, there's an emotion that's connected to it. There's fear connected to that. So, that's why we suppress and deny things in the first place. So we need to really address those fears. Also, what we reject in ourselves, we often project onto other people. Because no matter how much we deny something or suppress something inside of us, that energy still exists within ourselves, and it wants to be seen and heard in some way. So the way it makes itself shown to us is through other people, because other people will pick up on that energy inside of us, and they will show us, here it is, take a look. So for example, we may experience the shadow of rage, right? If you have a hard time being with your own rage, which a lot of people have a hard time with, quite frankly, and you want to suppress that, or you want to deny the fact that you ever have rage. So for example, we may experience that shadow of rage as explosions with other people, or implosions within ourselves. So again, because that which we disown kind of owns us, because it will show up in some way. It has to show up in some way. So whatever we resist also persists. So we have to remember that no matter what the energy is that we have a hard time being within ourselves, it is going to show up somehow, somewhere, right? So we will either experience it in the outside world in some way, or we will experience it through other people, or we will feel this implosion inside of us because of that energy not having an outlet. So what shadow issues need to be addressed over the next 4 weeks? And this is something you can definitely ask yourself after the new moon becomes exact. And what benefits do I reap when I transmute my shadow issues? What are the benefits of that? Because of course there's fear, so we can see we don't want to deal with the fear. But if we maybe focus more on what the benefits are, maybe it would make it easier to connect to or move through the fear to the other side of it and really address what's there. So here are some questions to help you reclaim your projection. So if you do have something that you're projecting out into the world, because sometimes these things can be also quite unconscious, right? We can be quite unconscious about what are some of these energies that we're denying and not integrating. So questions you can ask yourself to reclaim some of these projections. Who really bothers me out there in the world? Is there anybody that you can think of that really bothers you? And who do I love to hate? This could also be people that we know personally. What specifically bothers me about them? What are some of the qualities or energies that bother me about this person? Or the flip side to this could also be, who do I admire out there in the world and why? Right? Because either way, sometimes we project things that we have a hard time being with that feel uncomfortable, but sometimes we also project things onto other people that we can't be with because they seem too good or too big or too amazing. So who do I admire and why? But what it really comes down to is this: what scares me most about myself? What reoccurring, uncomfortable or scary dreams or daydreams do I have? And of course, this requires complete honesty with ourselves and non-judgment, because the moment we judge something that's scary or that's uncomfortable or something that we don't want to be with, we tend to push it straight down into the unconscious and go, whoops, that's not me. I don't want to be that, right? So think of it as like the more honest and authentic you can be with yourself here, and the more non-judgmental you can be with yourself here, the more you can start to integrate some of these things, and that's healthy. What do I love to joke about that feels just a little uncomfortable? Again, that can also show us some of our shadow issues. So noticing our own desires, our own fears, our sense of humor, all of that is important, because the shadow also makes itself visible through those things. Now let's look at the aspects of this super new moon chart. This super new moon trines the exalted Neptune in Pisces. A trine is always a harmonious aspect, and this makes it easier for us to trust and flow with the energy currents that are coming in and moving through, rather than struggling against them. So that's a nice thing. It also makes it easier to release past traumas or emotional attachments that no longer serve us. So emotional attachments that no longer serve us, of course, keep us in a lower vibrational place. So it's very helpful when we have the ability to let them go, or when we can start to release some of these things in a loving way. Now ask yourself, what traumas from the past are asking to be released? What if I took a closer look at some old resentments, fears, and misconceptions? If I gave those difficult experiences my conscious awareness, my love, and spoke the truth about them, especially the emotional truth, right? It's very important that Scorpio is an emotional sign. If we spoke the emotional truth about them, might this dispel any darkness I still feel in connection to those experiences? That's a very powerful question if that resonates with you, I really want to invite you to work with this question for the next 28 days after the new moon becomes exact. So let me repeat this question. If I give those difficult experiences that I've had in the past my conscious awareness, my love, and spoke the truth about them, might this dispel any darkness I still feel in connection to those experiences? And we all have stuff, right? We all have stuff in the past that has felt disempowering, that has felt traumatic in some way. Sometimes we tend to minimize these things. But when we really look, what has felt kind of traumatic to us, or what has felt kind of like an emotional jolt in our lives. Now, some other questions you can ask here is, where could I allow myself to open myself up emotionally? Because remember, any trauma that we've experienced in the past, it usually closes us off emotionally. It usually creates this wall, or it creates this protective armor around us. So where could I allow myself? And this doesn't mean you have to, be emotionally 100% available all of the time. But where could I allow yourself to just open yourself up a little bit on an emotional level? And what am I afraid would happen if I let go of needing to be in control? Because very often what happens too is when we have had traumatic experiences, we tend to want to be in control because that gives us this false sense of safety and this false sense of power. So what am I afraid would happen if I let go of needing to be in control? And what am I afraid of happening if I completely surrender to life or to love? And this is something we may not always do consciously, but there is this sense of not wanting to surrender to life a lot of times, where there's this resistance towards life. And sometimes even resistance towards love or letting love in. Now, if out of control was simply a matter of perspective, would I still resist it? And remember that this feeling of out of control is very often connected to trauma, and it is very often what makes us feel like we need to be in control, because feeling out of control feels so uncomfortable. But what if feeling out of control was just a matter of perspective and how we looked at that and what we made that mean? Would we still resist it? And would I dare to embrace it? Could I dare to embrace it, this feeling out of control? And of course, right now, this year that we've been through already, there's been a lot of feeling out of control. A lot of not knowing what's coming next, and we don't really know how to, make anything work, or how to move with certain things, with people, with certain rules and regulations. There's sort of a sense of feeling out of control with that. So how could we embrace that? Or how could we be just okay with that or not resist it as much? And could I trust, just for right now, that there's always a bigger plan at play? And that has to do with trusting life, right? If we trust life, we're trusting that there's something bigger that I personally, as this human consciousness, cannot see yet. Could I trust, just for now, that there's always a bigger plan at play? And could I simply ask for my higher self to support me in letting things unfold for the highest good of everyone involved, rather than assuming that I know what that might be? That's a really powerful question, because when we can start to do that, when we can start to just ask our higher self to support us in letting go and just letting things unfold, rather than thinking that we know what that needs to look like or what that needs to be, to just come from a place of being humble and being, just realizing that you are a minute part of this huge universe, and that this huge universe actually supports you. It's very humbling to think of that. And not to think of it in a way as that feels disempowering, but in a way that is the thing that is supporting you and that is empowering you. And to trust that no matter what shows up in the now moment, that we still trust, like, there is a bigger plan and the universe does support me. And part of that, my higher self, is connected to that energy field. Now, this super new moon also sextiles the Jupiter-Pluto-Saturn alignment in Capricorn, which has been going on for a while and most of the year, really. And this sextile is an opportunity to deepen our authentic connection to our long-term commitments. So you can ask yourself here, what needs a closer look and deep honesty with myself when it comes to my long-term goals or achievements? What serves me long-term, and what empowers me and is sustainable? Now, we are invited to cut out anything that is toxic and step into a more empowered experience socially and how we want to be seen out there in the world. And we're invited to let go of fears connected to our long-term goals. Or you could also say to our fears that are connected to our social standing in the world as well. So ask yourself, in what area of my life do I still not feel fully empowered? And what needs to be addressed and brought up into full consciousness in order to get to a place of emotional authenticity with myself and the world? And what scares me the most about this process? Because remember, all of this, of course, is a process. Nothing ever happens right away. The mind likes to think it does, but when we deal with emotional processes, and Scorpio always is an emotional process, when we deal with emotional processes, they happen slowly. They happen in the timing that your emotional body needs to move through something. And the emotional body always moves slower than the mental body. So what scares me the most about this process? And what if I had the courage to do it in spite of all my fears or concerns? And what would it look like? What would be the first small step towards my own empowerment in the world? And remember, one step at a time is a great way to go, because every step takes us just a little bit closer, rather than thinking we have to leap 100 steps at once. Look to see what would it look like if I could just take small baby steps, and then that way I'll get there eventually. But at least I will definitely get there. If we leap 100 steps in advance, it might not serve us, because it might be too overwhelming to do that. And we might bounce back and move even further backwards than where we've started from. So what would be the first small step towards my own empowerment in the world? And where are my opportunities for making long-term commitments in connection with my intimate relationships or shared resources with other people? So what are my opportunities for making long-term commitments in connection with intimate relationships or shared resources with other people? And what emotional, authentic connections do I need to make to smooth the path right now? So what are these emotional, authentic connections that I need to make? And this is very important, because when we're not authentic, when we pretend that we are better than we are, when we pretend that we are more extraordinary than what we're actually experiencing or what we're feeling, when we're not allowing ourselves to be emotionally authentic, where we can show people that we have feelings, that we have fears, that we have vulnerabilities, it's very difficult to make any meaningful connections without that. So what emotional, authentic connections do I need to make to smooth the path right now? And this aspect also supports our moving from survival mode to a passionate engagement with life and the society that we belong to. And of course, a passionate approach is key here. It is also important to empower other people. So if we're passionate about life and we're able to empower other people, that is what helps us move from a survival mode to a passionate engagement with life and the society that we belong to. So ask yourself here, is it at least possible that a trusting emotional connection with others might create more authentic and passionate engagement around what I'm building for the long term? And what might transform if I focused 5% more on what I actually have control over? That is always a great question. And this is always something that people forget. They focus on things that they don't have control over. And then they're surprised that they feel disempowered or that they feel, out of control. What might transform if I focused 5% more on what I actually have control over? And what roles do self-responsibility, a realistic self-assessment, and healthy boundaries play in all of this. Now, Mars, which is the traditional ruler of Scorpio, is currently in Aries and is exalted due to that station phase, as I mentioned briefly already at the beginning of this video. And Mars changes direction on November 13 and feels exalted until November 23rd. So this makes for a very active time, but it also could bring up impatience, frustration, impulsiveness, and aggression. So as best as you can, be mindful how you're relating to this exalted energy within you, or also how you relate to it in the outside world. Channel it in healthy ways. So for example, exercise is a great way to channel this very active Mars energy. Taking actions that feel empowering to yourself and others is another way to do it. Don't rush into doing anything when you're feeling emotionally aroused. Instead, take a deep breath and talk about what you would like to do, or journal on it first, or whatever else sounds like a good idea before you jump into something. Now, when feeling aroused or impatient, ask yourself, does this definitely need to happen now? Does this action support everyone involved? Is the outcome of this action beneficial to me in the long run? Who could I talk to about my current frustrations? What might support me in releasing some of these energies without causing any harm to anyone, myself included? So these are some really, really great questions that I want to urge you to connect with if you do feel some of that exalted Mars energy show up in your life. And of course, if you are an Aries, or if you have a strong Mars in your chart to begin with, then this is definitely something you want to focus on for the next 28 days. Now, feel free to also check out my video presentation about Mars and Neptune changing directions to see how all of this is impacting you personally and how to work with these energies more consciously. You can purchase the webinar on my website, on my webinar page, but there's also going to be a link below this video. Now, star members, please check your email for the link to the MP4 video recording and enjoy watching it. I will send that out on November 8th in the evening. Now, Mercury in Scorpio makes an opposition to Uranus in Taurus and a quincunx to Chiron in Aries. So let's talk about this and let's unpack that a little bit. Now, with the Mercury-Uranus opposition, the issue of projection might be heightened. So we already know that Scorpio sometimes deals with projection, but this could make it even stronger. So Uranus is the archetype of revolutionary change, and it asks us to think way, way outside the box. Uranus breaks up old forms and patterns, or outdated forms and patterns, and it forces us to reform and re-envision things. And sometimes that can be a process that can be unpleasant, depending on how much we want to hold on to the old stuff and to the stuff that's not working anymore. And sometimes it can be a very freeing experience. It can be a huge breakthrough that we can experience with something. Now, we may find that we disagree with other people's values with this opposition. We may feel restless, we might even feel anxious, and therefore we feel a pressure to act or sometimes react in regards to other people. So these feelings could also be connected to financial decisions or partnerships. So anything in connection to money could show up here, in connection to what we think is important in our lives, something in connection to our physical body or the planet, the earth, or the places where we live. Now, if you experience fear or uncertainty in any of your relationships or partnerships, focus on what it is that you could really get excited about and get behind in a realistic, grounded way. Something that could make a difference, something that's meaningful, and as best as you can, be open to receiving feedback from others during this time. feedback can be very valuable. Actually, brainstorming can be really valuable here with this aspect. Connecting with other people and doing a brainstorm on something that you might want to shift or change. Now, if you get entangled in controversy, ask yourself, how open-minded and flexible could I allow myself to be right now? And what alternative tool might provide me greater freedom or diversity, financially or otherwise? And how could being emotionally truthful with myself and others, despite my fears, create a shift? Also, if empowerment only exists in the now moment, could I surrender my fears or concerns connected to the past or the future and simply be present in the here and now? And that's a very powerful question. What if I trusted my higher self enough to release any suspicious, fearful, or protective thoughts that may arise? Because remember, Mercury in Scorpio, we're going to have some obsessive thinking. We might have some suspicious, fearful thoughts. We might have this worst case scenario thinking. We might want to protect ourselves. All that stuff might arise. But what if I trusted my higher self, the part of me that's heart-centered, that's connected to the universe enough? What if I trusted that enough to release any of that other stuff? And check to see if I don't go into memory or possible futures, and that includes worst case scenarios, am I okay right now? So if I don't go into memory, which is, the past or everything that's happened up until now, or possible futures or, imaginary scenarios or worst case scenarios, am I okay right now? And if I am, is it at least possible that I will be okay in the next moment and in the next? And these are some questions you can ask if you're feeling nervous, if you're feeling anxious, if you have some kind of obsessive thoughts, fearful thoughts, anything like that. All right, now remember, Mercury is still in its shadow phase until November 19th. And so that means that we can use this time to talk about things that may have come up during the Mercury retrograde phase from October 13th until November 3rd. So think back to those dates and think, is there anything that we need to bring up again, talk about again, process through again that has already come up before, and maybe move forward with some of these things. Now, Mercury in Scorpio quincunxes Chiron in Aries. So this could create mental insecurities, leading to some unexpected emotional reactions. Could also be a feeling of mental instability. So as best as you can, forgive yourself for having a human moment, or for feeling an insecurity, or for feeling unstable at this time. Because when you can give yourself permission to feel that will support your healing process. Now, this aspect operates more on an internal level. So we feel uneasy about something. And so as best as you can, be really kind and compassionate with yourself. And the best way to deal with quincunxes is not to keep looking for the exact solution, but to keep looking for ways to feel okay when things are not an exact match. So in other words, feeling okay when something is uncomfortable. Because when things are uncomfortable, that means they're not matching, right? They're not quite in harmony. So check to see, do I feel unloved? Do I feel unworthy? Do I feel simply not good enough in some ways? And if I have any of those feelings, could I allow them to simply be there just for right now? And could I be open to the possibility that these feelings are coming up right now to simply be acknowledged and witnessed? And just remember, when we acknowledge and witness a feeling, that is powerful. That is very powerful. Do not underestimate just acknowledging or witnessing a feeling that is moving through your emotional body. That's very powerful. Because very often we don't do that. Very often we try to manage our feelings, we judge our feelings, we deny our feelings. We do all sorts of things other than acknowledging and witnessing it. So just remember, it's very powerful to do that. Also, check to see if you're maybe revisiting any themes that came up around October 4th and or October 22nd. Because on those days, this quincunx between Mercury and Chiron was also exact. So there might be some resonance in connection with those dates. So ask yourself, what was present in my life at that time during those dates or right around those dates? How would I characterize my relationship with the active masculine energy within or around me back then? Do I have any realizations about my body, my intimate relationships, or my personal goals? And what was my understanding of what needed further healing or compassion or self-forgiveness at that time? And what still does? What still needs my compassion or my self-forgiveness? And could I hang out with any discomfort this is stirring up inside of me just for right now? All right, so last but not least, let's talk about Venus in Libra making an exact square to Pluto, which is the modern ruler of Scorpio and is currently in Capricorn. So there's an exact square between Venus in Libra and Pluto in Capricorn. And since Pluto is currently closely aligned with Jupiter and Saturn, Venus, of course, ultimately also squares all of these planets in Capricorn: Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto. Now, Venus represents our relationships and that which we most value. And this square challenges us to find meaning in our life through partnerships. So we're invited to uncover the deeper layers of our life. With Pluto in the mix, social interactions could be intense, could also feel limiting to some extent because of Saturn being there. And so as best as you can, empower rather than disempower. Stay very present in the here and now. Slow down. It's time to let go of destructive attachments and connections. And ask yourself, how can I grow and evolve in my relationships? Is there a relationship that I need to grow and evolve out of? And as best as you can, stay grounded in love, not fear. Stay flexible and open-minded. And of course, nurture yourself whenever possible. Be really good to yourself. This is not to be underestimated. You know, some people think it's like, be good to myself. Well, whoop-de-doo, what's that going to do for me? But trust me, being good to yourself does a lot for you. And it does a lot for your relationships. It does a lot for your feeling safe out there in the world. If you're good to yourself, if you nurture yourself, you can have all of that. Now make sure you have everything you need to be able to come from a place of inner strength and empowerment. And nurturing yourself will give you that, just that, okay? Now, to sum it all up for this super new moon, being open to trusting the process and going with the flow are key. Most of our lives are shaped by fears, too much of something, not enough of something else, the unknown, not being loved, not being liked, being judged, being rejected, being the recipient of physical or emotional pain, loss, death, etc., etc. These are all connected to fear, right? Our fear of all of that. Now, Scorpio's territory is not easy. Facing our deepest feelings and fears, confronting our demons and our death is the most difficult work we will ever do. But the rewards it brings when we do the work is really all worth it, because it brings inner peace, it brings a sense of freedom, a sense of wholeness, a sense of authenticity with yourself. Feels so incredibly empowering, and that makes it worth it. Now, this super new moon in Scorpio invites us to let go of whatever is dead or toxic. Often this is connected to past disempowerment, fears based on either on what was or on a possible future in which we would not be okay. And all this can be scary and stir up the desire for control. But the survival brain thinks that control brings power, certainty, and stability. But please remember that is not true. That is an illusion based on fear. Our survival brain thinks that that's true, but it's not so. So remember, fear is resistance to life, whereas love is acceptance of life in all its forms, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And Scorpio is all about connecting all of those things within ourselves. So ask yourself, as best as I can, could I acknowledge any self-resistance, resistance towards others, towards life itself? And just for right now, could I simply let go of wanting to resist what is? Could I set all inattention free, just as best as I can, just for right now, just as an experiment in freedom? These are powerful questions, and I really invite you to use them as much as you can after this new moon becomes exact. The key is really to realize that letting go is not about loss. It's about transformation and ultimately about feeling empowered, since every ending is also always a new beginning, no matter what. Whenever there's an ending, there's also a new beginning, no matter what. And Scorpio knows that. So trust is also a big part of this, of course, because we have to trust that that's true, because when we're moving towards an ending, we don't always know what the new beginning is going to be. And just like right now with the way things are in our society, we're moving towards an ending of some sort, but we don't know yet what the new beginning will look like and whether it's going to be any good or not. So of course that creates fear. That's why trust is so important. Trust plays a really crucial role. And it also, of course, plays a crucial role in our intimate relationships and in our authentic connections with other people. So trust, whether it is in ourselves or with others or with life, it is something that develops over time. And for those of us who have experienced traumatic events or circumstances in the past, this process might take a little bit longer because it might be more difficult to trust, because we're more scared. You know, a traumatic event creates more fear in our system, in our body, emotional and physical body. And so this process can take a little bit longer because of that, because we have to first allow that to release before we can start to fully relax and trust. So ask yourself, what if true intimacy with another is only possible when I allow for the full range of emotion? And what if my capacity for love and joy grew exponentially in relation to my ability to embrace my fears and my pain? And these things are all difficult. None of this is easy, right? That's why Scorpio is not an easy sign, not an easy energy. But it is essential if we want to experience true empowerment within ourselves. So again, flexibility and open-mindedness will definitely help for the next 28 days after the new moon becomes exact. Embracing our humanity and practicing self-compassion, especially around our inner processes and limitations, that will provide an opportunity for healing. And if you do have an ascendant or any personal planets in 21 to 25 degrees of Scorpio, Taurus, Leo, or Aquarius, then you will feel the impact of this super new moon more strongly than other people. But even if you don't have personal planets or points in those degrees and signs, take a look at your birth chart and look to see where does 23 degrees of Scorpio land in your birth chart. Where does that take place? And the house placement of the new moon will indicate which area of your life is going to be most impacted for the next 28 days. And if you don't know how to look that up, feel free to check out my 30-minute class on how to read my birth chart. You can get free access to this class via my homepage at astrologercoach.com. It just scroll down all the way to where it says free class. There's going to be a window where it says free class, and click on that and just get it from there. And before we talk about intention settings, let me just briefly mention my next forecasting forum will be on December 6th. And we will talk about the upcoming Jupiter-Saturn alignment in Aquarius, which will take place in the end of December. And that starts a new 20-year social economic cycle. So this is very powerful, this alignment. And feel free to join us if you want to know how this connects with your own birth chart and how this will impact you personally. I will also answer questions in connection with the eclipses that are also taking place in December. So feel free to ask questions about the eclipses or the Jupiter-Saturn alignment in Aquarius in connection with your own chart. And to register, click on the link below this video or go to my homepage. There's a countdown, forecasting forum countdown for this webinar. And registration also includes the next Members Full Moon video, which will be the lunar eclipse in Gemini. And an early bird special is available until December 3rd. So feel free to take advantage of that if you are not yet a star member. Star members, of course, are automatically registered, so you don't have to do anything. Now, let's talk about setting intentions for this super new moon. The new moon is always a great time to set intentions for the next 28 days. And it's always best to do that right after the new moon becomes exact, within the first 48 hours especially. And definitely not during a moon void of course phase. So we want to avoid moon void of course phases. So this month, the best and most potent time to set intentions will be between 12:07 a.m. and 6:13 a.m. on November 15th. So the morning hours of November 15th. And then again from 10:47 a.m. on November 15th until 12:07 a.m. on November 17th. That is, right after midnight on November 17th. And all of these times are given in US Eastern Time. And if you live in another time zone other than Eastern Time, US East Coast Time, feel free to join my Facebook fan page or follow me on Twitter. I will be posting reminders on November 15th in the early morning and in the afternoon and evening, and on November 16th throughout the day and night, to let you know when it is time to set your intentions. So when you see those posts, when you see those reminders, just know, okay, now is time to set my intentions, and you can just sit down and set your intentions at that moment. Now, for more information about setting intentions, go to my website, go to my blog page, and then look for astrology articles, or look for the tag New Moon Intentions. That's on the right-hand side of the blog page if you are accessing it from a computer. But I will also have a link below this video, so you can just click on that link as well. All right, now to sign up for my free monthly newsletter, you can do that via my homepage at astrologercoach.com, or you can email us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write newsletter in the subject line. My newsletter will have special offers in it, videos, announcements about webinars or courses that I do. So feel free to sign up for that if that is of interest to you. And if you have any general questions about this super new moon or about astrology, feel free to reach out to me to info@astrologercoach.com. If you have any personal questions that require of me to pull up your birth charts, then please book a reading at astrologercoach.com, or you can also ask me personal questions connected to what's coming up within the next 30 to 40 days when you join the next monthly forecasting forum on December 6th. Again, we will focus on the upcoming Jupiter-Saturn alignment in Aquarius that starts this new social economic cycle, and you can also ask questions about the upcoming eclipses in December. Now, my members will see me in 2 weeks around the time of the lunar eclipse, so we can look at how far we've come since setting our new moon intentions. And everyone else will see me in about 4 weeks for the next new moon, which will also be a solar eclipse. And, also watch out for additional support videos that I'm creating for 2020 right now, because I feel like we all could need a little additional support. And yeah, just in general, stay healthy, stay focused on your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, and do your best to keep raising your own frequencies through activities and daily routines that support a higher vibrational outcome for yourself and everybody else involved. That will ultimately really support you. All right? So have a fantastic super new moon. Much love to you all. Have a good one. Goodbye.